Hello, I'm Will Burns, and I am the founder and CEO of Ideasicle X, which is a SaaS platform designed specifically and only for virtual idea generation in teams of four. And I'm here with a very special guest. And this is someone, and the reason she's so special, beyond her good hair day today, is the fact that she is one of the very, very first customers. In fact, before we had customers, we had beta testers, and Teri was cool enough to agree to bring her agency into this beta test. So she's been with the platform probably longer than anyone else except for me. I was using it before there was even a beta. So welcome, Teri. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here, Will. Thanks.
Cool. Well, let's start by talking about your role at White Rhino and maybe a little bit about the agency and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at White Rhino. So I oversee our research process, but then translating that into creative briefs and overseeing throughout a project, making sure that whatever we're producing is laddering back to that strategy.
Awesome. And any news on White Rhino, or maybe you could just give
Yeah.
it a quick overview on what White Rhino is all about.
Yeah, yeah. White Rhino, we're a full service communications agency, but everything that we do is rooted in psychology and neuroscience, and so we really like to dig into what is motivating audiences on a very personal level, and we do that mostly in the business to business and healthcare space, which are two very complex spaces for messaging, and that's for me, one of the things that's been nice about Ideasicle is that we've had the opportunity to put out these complex messaging strategies that need a simple creative solution and get some really great ideas out of the platform to be able to help serve those messaging needs.
Cool. I mean, the psychology and B2B, you had me there.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool. So let's go back in time. This is like, I don't know, middle of last year or something like that. I approached you with the idea of Ideasicle X, and I was like, you want to be a beta tester? Do you remember what your first impression was of how I described the platform before it even really existed?
I knew it was something novel and new, and I'm always up for trying anything new. And also, I knew it would tap us into different creative resources. And what I appreciated about the model is that there was a variety of different talent that we could tap into at one time. And it seemed that that was something that was sort of inaccessible to us in the past. Certainly, we as a model, White Rhino works with a lot of freelance creative resources, but usually just have a team of two people, writer, art director type situation, and sort of the variety of that really appealed to me. I'm from a strategy standpoint, I'm really big on bringing in multiple perspectives and finding the interesting intersections of that. So it really appealed to me that you were able to bring together such a diverse group of creatives.
Yeah, and that's really a fundamental principle of the model, is to bring in multiple perspectives that don't all think alike, right? That aren't gonna, if you have a promotions assignment, it's not all promotions people. You might have a
Mhm,
couple to ground the rest of the team into the realities of promotions, but you might want to
mhm,
have some wild cards in
mhm,
there too, just to really chomp on the
mhm.
assignment.
That's actually, so not to get too much into tactics of how the platform works, but that makes me think of when you're in the middle of an idea storm, it can feel like everybody's going in slightly different directions. And I think in the past, when I've worked on creative, you're trying to get the team to go in a single direction together. But what's great about Ideasicle is that it's good and healthy for different people to take things in slightly different directions, and then they comment on each other's and take that person in a slightly new direction, and that's where you get all these different avenues that you explore. At the end of the day, then you have a nice platter of options to kind of weigh against the strategy. So I really value that about the platform.
Yeah, I'm glad that you do. And I've seen it too, where the different perspectives almost inspire each other. Like
Mhm,
you've got the brief, which hopefully is inspiring, but then you've
mhm.
got these individuals who come at it very differently and might spark ideas in others that they would never have thought of
Yep.
otherwise. Now going back to your first, I know this is hard because you guys done about 10 projects or so with Ideasicle X, but do you remember when you first actually used the product? What was your first impression, not knowing really what to expect?
I think in terms of do you mean in terms of the interactions or the
Just
interface
in
or all of
general,
the above in
just in
general?
general, I promised I was going to give you this
Mhm.
platform, and then you actually try it, and you're like, were you surprised? Was it exactly as expected? Were there any impressions that you have?
Yeah, I think I went in not knowing what to expect. I was pleasantly surprised by how easy it was to use and keep the conversation flowing. But hands down, the biggest surprise and in such a good way was I would say within the first hour of being on the platform and having launched the project, I was getting ideas that were making me smile, right? I was excited about what we were getting. And you don't typically get that in a creative process. Normally you brief the team and then you go off and a few days later you hope that they come back with something good. And I knew right away that we were getting really great ideas.
Well, that is the big difference, right? From like traditional freelance, where you brief
Mhm.
them on a Tuesday, they go away till Friday, and you have no idea if they're on strategy or not during that time. But with this, there's visibility.
Mhm. Yeah, it was great.
So how is the agency? How is White Rhino? You seem to be a supporter, but how does the rest of the agency feel about what comes out of this process?
I think I'll admit it's different. It's a different model than we're used to working in. So it's been an adjustment in terms of thinking about what's the best way to infuse this into our creative process. And we've made some changes, but everybody's really embraced those changes. And even we have dedicated writers that we work with a lot. And one thing that we found that works really well is we've invited them into the Ideasicle brainstorm, so they're part of that initial team. And then once we have the ideas coming out of that writer that works with us full time, they continue to take and push those ideas over the fence, or take and do that last mile of the actual execution. So we've found including them in the process early on really helps.
That's great. Yeah, we see that a lot. Even when agencies are using employees, it's a way to bring employees that may not typically work together. But again, back to your point earlier about different perspectives, you could have a PR person and a digital person and an account person and a traditional creative all chomping on it together. But our employees, you don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
You're already paying them, and so it's a little
Hmm.
bit cheaper in that sense.
Yeah.
Can you get it? You probably don't want to give anything proprietary away, and I wouldn't want you to, or even client names or anything like that. But can you get into the kinds of assignments that you've decided were right for Ideasicle X, and maybe some that you've decided were not?
Hmm. The projects that have been, and first of all projects have been successful in my opinion. We haven't had a dud, right, of a project on Ideasicle. Like every time we come back with great stuff. But I would say there are certain projects that are better than others. And for us, the best projects are when we're looking for creative ways, novel ways of talking about a key message. So not a tagline. I would never put a project through where I'm looking for a tagline that's trademarkable, but I like to call them brand lines. Like, what's the big creative brand message that we want to get across that feels like a tagline, but it's more like a campaign line, kind of a rally cry for the brand. That is usually the purpose with which we put a project through Ideasicle. But in the process, what we get out of that too is that the teams are great about brainstorming different tactical executions that might support that. And they'll talk about, oh, it'd be cool if you did a video on this, or what if you did a crazy billboard like this? And so they'll come up with really great ideas that also can fall under that. But we do find that it's really a great place for us to get that one killer, clever headline, essentially, but it's more of like a big brand line. And then we're able to then launch really great campaigns off of that.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen that myself with other agencies that use it just like that to kind of come up with a big idea quickly for a pitch, maybe, or even
Hmm.
to jumpstart the internal team's own creative process. Like, it's
Yeah.
so much easier to start with 40 ideas than it is to start with a blank piece of paper. And so, somebody might be like, oh, number 33, I like that. Can I go develop that? Almost like they're shopping for ideas internally.
Yeah, it's like an idea bank. You just kind of go and mine it, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. You kind of scrape away a few things, you get some great ideas, and then you kind of take it to the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm obviously biased, but I do find it is kind of like a cheat code in many ways that way.
Yeah.
Any sort of interesting anecdotes in any particular projects that come to mind?
I think one interesting thing, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that each of the experts comes with a very different point of view, which is great because you see them feed off of each other and bounce things off of each other. There's been times where sometimes people go down a wrong path, and one important thing I like to say is just sort of let it ride a little bit. Don't jump down somebody's throat because they're not quite on strategy. Because even when something's off strategy, keep in mind you've given them a box to play in, but you want them to go a little bit outside of that box because you may not have thought of everything as well. And that's what I love about it too, is I don't feel like I have to nail the creative message, but I just have to give them a really good starting place, make sure there's enough parameters that they're not all over the place. And so when someone's kind of going off track, I sort of let it ride a little bit, and sort of see if, because sometimes they might just give up on that direction and come back around to something else as they see how I'm giving feedback to other experts and other ideas. They might kind of see some of that. And they might change course that way. And then you can always, maybe a day into it, if they're still kind of going down that path and you're feeling it's a little off strategy, there's nice ways in which you can compliment them for the value of the idea while also helping them understand why it's not on strategy. I try to avoid, telling them what it should be and trying to, play creative director, but instead just helping them understand why it's not laddering up to the strategy, more what we're trying to accomplish with the strategy, and then allowing them to kind of take it from there.
And this speaks, I think that's really wise advice. And I think that speaks to the visibility that you have into the actual live creative process. Like though you couldn't do that when they're away for 3 or 4 days coming up with concepts, but you can. And the other thing I would say in reaction is I've seen a post that was basically should not have been posted, but somebody said, I've got a dentist appointment this afternoon, I won't be able to get on this project till tonight, and it posted it as an idea. It should have been an email anyway. The rest of the team picked up on dentist appointment, and it turned into an idea that we ended up presenting to a client.
Cool.
So to your point, allowing a little flexibility, it depends how much time you have too, but allowing a little flexibility to let them mine that shaft that you may not have thought of is really, really smart, I think.
Well, and speaking of time, we typically run a project for 4 days. I don't know if the experts like this, but we typically try to schedule them around the weekends because we actually get some nice creative thinking on the weekends.
Interesting.
So we'll start on a Thursday and kind of wrap on, so I guess it's a little more than 4 days, 4 or 5 days. We'll wrap on like a Monday or Tuesday. And we get some really, in the first 2 days, I get more great ideas than in a typical creative process I would get in 2 weeks. Just in the first 2 days, there's always at least one killer idea that in 2 weeks in a traditional process I never would have gotten to in the first place. And so that's always gratifying because in the first 2 days you feel like, oh, okay, this is great. And now you can really let them kind of go different directions. The weekend rolls in and there's influences from their life probably, happening at this point. And so you get those new different perspectives. And then on the Monday, Tuesday, I usually like to give a summary about where the ideas are, the ones that are really tracking well, and then give the team a few unexplored directions and try to, get some in that last mile.
That's really smart. Now, you already have given a lot of great advice. Do you have any other, now that you've done so many projects, with respect to actually managing the teams and managing the project and keeping it as efficient but loose as possible, do you have any advice for others who are just starting out?
I think one thing when I first started was I wasn't sure how much I should comment as a moderator. And so I think I can share some of what I've learned there. I've learned over time absolutely, when there's a killer idea, to make sure that you're commenting and responding to that. But I don't always feel like I have to respond to every great idea, because I use those check-ins, those summary moments, to also make sure that, those are bubbling to the top. I try to be um, conscious of, am I commenting on one person's ideas too much, right? I do want to foster a sense that all ideas are good ideas and should be explored. And so I try to watch that in my interactions with the team as well, and making sure I'm giving good space to all the ideas. So those are some of the strategies that I use from a commenting standpoint.
Those are great. And just to wrap up, I'm curious how you approach the briefing materials, because what we recommend is a PDF and a video, but we really have no control from there on out how customers use it. So how have you used it to best effect?
Yeah, I've learned over time how to create a good brief. I think early on we had some lengthy briefs, and I saw some comments in the feed from the experts on that about how lengthy our briefs were, and so I've definitely learned that 2 pages, 2 pages is about the max you want to do. If you can get it to 1 page, great. I've also learned that, the importance of the video is not to read through every detail of the brief, but to really just hone in on the nuances that you want them to understand about the message and about the audience, and just make sure you kind of hit home some of those key things. And then the other tip I would give about the brief is, don't give them too many restrictions. Make sure you're giving them an open box. And certainly if there is a definite, stay away from this word. I've done that, but I've also said, generally stay away from it. But if you have a killer idea that uses that word, throw it out there, because, it may very well be the best of all the ideas. So, don't restrict them too much. The goal with Ideasicle is to let them go broad. And then it's your job as a strategist at the end to take that and synthesize it and go and get focused on the ideas that are the best.
That is awesome. Well, Teri, we talk a lot about experts around here, Ideasicle experts, and I think you might be the first customer expert with Ideasicle X. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this and share your thoughts. If you have any others, send them in an email. I'm all ears, but I'm sure other potential customers will learn a lot from this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having the idea in the first place, to bring folks together like this. For us, it's been pretty invaluable. So.
Oh, that's great. You're welcome. All right. Thank you. We'll see you.
All right.